Hi everyone, Knife Edge UK here. We've got a new video for you today looking at an absolutely beautiful custom slip joint. There's a bit of a preview of what I think of it, obviously. Sorry if there's a bit of background noise on the video today. There's an absolute gale blowing outside and a few other things going on here, so hopefully the audio quality is still just about bearable. Okay, so before we get on with this this beautiful knife here, this is the the Birdvis Hitchcock, as you'll have seen in the title. Let's do a few quick comparisons, some of which are kind of useful and some of which are probably less so. Here we've got it next to a large Sebenza 21. Still the king of Sebenzas in my book. A XM18 3.5 Bowie, and then we'll put it next to another custom slip joint. This is a custom Lanny's clip by Enrique Pena. As you can see, this is a slightly bigger knife. This is just over a 3-inch blade, and so you're looking at quite a compact little slip joint from the Birdvis, but it feels nice in hand. And then we'll do another custom slip joint. This is a Romano native. As you can see, this one has slightly longer blade, slightly longer handle, but we're in sort of a similar ballpark in some ways. And I'll tell you what, let's just put it next to a ruler for those of you that like that. You can see the blade's about 2.5 inches. Anyway, now we're 1:30 in. Let's get on with the actual knife itself. Okay, so who are Birdvis? Well, Nick Timson, that's right. I really hope I've got that right because I don't want to refilm this because of that. He's a knife maker in America. I forget the state. Apologies about that, Nick. And he makes the Hitchcock at the moment. This is his first of his own designs. Before that, he actually came on my radar quite a long time ago. At the time, I had mostly UK legal slip joints in my collection, various different bits and pieces. And he, at the time, was making replacement covers for the line steel Dom, the line steel Shuffler, basically all the Mike Latham collaboration slip joints with line steel. And they were beautiful. The covers looked absolutely fantastic. He did Mike Carter, he did different types of jigged bone and all sorts of things. Anyway, I was a bit late to the wagon. When I first started speaking to him, he was still making them, but only just, and we never quite lined something up. And then he started making his own slip joints not that long after that. They tended to be sort of ultralight styles with G10 or Micarta liners, if I remember correctly. And he traversed some of the classic slip joint patterns. You know, he did Lanny's clips, Barlow's, and I think he occasionally does still do Barlow's at the time. He probably still does them all periodically. At the time of writing, he did a Barlow in beautiful rich light scales quite recently. Anyway, he eventually came up with his own pattern, which is obviously always, I think, what a slip joint maker, I think, is hoping to do. You know, do a pattern that kind of takes off in the slip joint world and maybe eventually gets made by other people. And this is the first pattern he did, the Hitchcock. And the Hitchcock has been done in a few different versions. This is the version 1. There was also a large, which I think he's done sometimes, and now there's a V2 as well. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences between this and the V2 once we've gone over this knife in a bit more detail. I have spoken to him about the V1, and he has said that he hasn't necessarily put this version to bed yet. There's a chance that there will be more V1s, and from my point of view, I really hope there is, because I particularly love the lines on the V1, and we'll come back to why in a minute. Anyway, so the knife itself, you have up front, now we've gone over the maker a little bit, we have up front a lovely kind of sheep's cliff kind of blade shape. It is a Warncliffe, but it's kind of a modified Warncliffe with a slight bit of belly in the actual edge itself. I'll bring it up closer to the camera for you so you can hopefully get a good look. This is CPM 154, pretty typical steel in the sort of high-end slip joint, custom slip joint world when it comes to stainless steels. It's lovely, fine-grained structured steel. It's the powdered metallurgy version of 154 CM. Lovely steel, same composition as RWL 34. In a lovely hand rub satin. I can say that Nick really has his hand rub satin down. That is a very, very good hand rub satin. It's up there with virtually, to be honest with you, I think that's as good a hand rub satin as any of my knives. And that includes some other incredible makers. He's nailed that hand rub satin. It's as good as anything. You have this lovely swedge up front. which curves over the top. The very first Hitchcock's just kind of had a straight swedge. It didn't dive towards the tip. It's absolutely lovely. Like many of the great kind of modern slip joint designs, if you think of the Native that I showed a minute ago, and the Dino, the nail nick or the long pull, depending on what it is, tend to play a really key part in the actual visual aspect of the knife, and I really like that, rather than it just being a functional thing. Like sometimes you see, you know, trappers with the nail nick like right down in a really functional but very, to my eyes at least, very ugly place. This is not the case for this knife at all. It's beautiful. It really sits with the knife, gives the blade a lovely sense of purpose in terms of its design. It's really good. Grind is nice and thin. It's not the absolute thinnest I've ever seen on a slip joint, but it's still a good slicer. I have used this only lightly so far, and it probably always will be a light use one, but there you go. Handle has this really nice design which kind of evokes a few of the kind of modern slip joints, you know, the modern classics of slip joints like the Native, in that it's got quite a bit of butt to it, and this lovely kind of I think he calls this he calls this the shoulder, but it's really nicely sculpted into the handle, and ergonomically it's really nice in hand. Feels purposeful. It's great. It's really, really well done. This particular one, a CPM 154 back spring, I think that's correct. The blade, incidentally, he lists the HRC for his blades. This one's at 60, I believe. I really like the fact that he does that, and that's great. That's a really, really nice thing. The walk and talk on the knife, the actual action, it's fantastic. It's everything you'd want from a really high-end slip joint. This is up there with most things. You can see that lovely bounce into the half stop, absolutely flat in the half stop position, really nice close, very nice as well, really hits in, looks really good in actually. The blade tang is actually quite well hidden compared to most slip joints, which is a really nice feature. And then on opening, it's lovely and smooth, a little bit harder on the full open as you would expect, and again, perfectly flush in the open. On this particular one, and obviously he's a custom maker, he does all manner of things, but he does really, really great things with micarta. He's obviously got a passion for vintage and, you know, old Westinghouse micarta, etc. This is kind of a chocolate brown vintage micarta. Having spoken to him, he seems to be fairly convinced that this is probably Westinghouse, but he didn't get it from a verified source, so he can't prove that it's Westinghouse. So good on him for not actually saying on the cert or in any of the blurb about a knife like this where he can't verify the vintage micarta that it is Westy if he doesn't know for sure. Lots of makers probably would just let that slide, and if they had as much experience with Westinghouse as he does, and they really thought it was, which I think he probably does think this one's Westinghouse, they'd probably say it was. He doesn't, and that's a really nice mark of integrity, so I appreciate that, and it's lovely to know it probably is, not that it matters. It's just a beautiful piece of paper micarta, and it's flawlessly finished. It's not going to come through in the video as well as I would like, but it's just... I mean, really, you have to see this finishing work in hand, but it's fantastic. He has his really distinctive shield inlay here, which is really, really nicely done. And there's a lovely video, I think it's on his YouTube and on his Instagram, if you go, you know, to his Instagram TV posts. And it actually happens to be this knife, I think I'm right in saying, where he did a video of how this inlay is done, and it's done with an old dental drill. It's really, really old school how he actually inlays these, and it's a fantastic piece of inlay work. I've had, you know, knives that have obviously got machine done inlays which aren't as clean as that. He has nailed that. There's nothing. It's so smooth. Everything's really, really well done. You can see the way that the knife is finished into the butt of the knife, the way that the actual back spring finishes there is dead parallel to the edge of the handle. Really nicely done. This version, this is where we get to one of the areas where the V1, or rather the V2 varies from the V1, is that it has a more rounded butt to the knife here. It's sort of a smooth rounded point here, and then the swedge is also smooth rather than this sort of more pointed point. More pointed point? More pointed accent. I must confess, I think they both look great. They're both really, really good looking slip joints. If I had to pick one, it would be the V1, because I just like the slightly more angular look, and in my hands at least, there's no downsides in any grip to having this slightly more angled end. These are all really smooth, rounded lines. There's nothing here that's causing a problem. There's a little thin line of blue G10. Sorry, I know I'm darting all over the place here a little bit, and inside here you can see, at least I hope you can see, the liners. There you go. The liners are also jeweled, which just finishes it off. When you get a really, really great custom slip joint, it's nice to at least have the whole of the inside of the knife perfectly finished and very, very smooth. You can see the gorgeous sort of high satin polish on everything inside on the back spring. It's really nicely done, but it's even better when there's a little bit of flair added to that as well. So basically, that's the Hitchcock. I must say, I liked this design the moment I saw it, and this particular knife was owned by a great guy here in the UK as well. I think it's Al's EDC on Instagram. I'll put a link to his Instagram below. He got this knife originally. I chased it quite hard for a while. I like all Hitchcocks really, but this one just spoke to me. I love the covers. I really like that little accent of blue and the jeweled liners. It just works for me personally. And incidentally, a little shout out as well to DP Steel and Leather. Again, I'll put a little thing in the description. This is a clip slip that was made for this knife. This knife actually comes with its own slip, lovely little box, and a nice little certificate directly from Nick, which is lovely. But this clip slip works so well, and this was something that Al had made to go with this knife, and he kindly included, and it's fantastic. It's great. So if you've got a really beautiful custom slip joint and you like, you know, having it located in your pocket really well, get one of those too. But yeah, I'll stop rambling, I promise. So it's just great. It's great in the hand. It's beautifully finished. It's really, really flawlessly done. The design, to my eye, is fantastic, very functional, and it's just a beautiful piece to have in a slip joint collection as well. And it's also really nicely UK legal. In terms of the size and everything. Again, talk to a lawyer, not a YouTuber if you're concerned, but in terms of what we think of broadly as UK legal carry knives, it's non-locking, it's well under 3 inches, it's got quite an innocuous blade shape as well, it's got some purpose to it, but it doesn't look, you know, overly aggressive or scary. If you pull this out, I don't think it's going to really freak anyone but the most worried of people. So it's just a great knife all round to have, and if you can get hold of one of these knives, they're not cheap. They're custom handmade slip joints by someone in the US who I think, on the evidence of this knife, is up there with most of the best. I think pretty much all of the best, to be honest with you. I think this is a great knife and well worth tracking down. So there you go. The Birdvis Hitchcock. Sorry for rambling on. If you've stuck with me this far, you are fabulous, and thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it, and there it is. Thank you guys. Catch you in the next one. Bye bye.